right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and to our live streaming audience. We have a great panel on legal careers and national security because there are a diverse amount of jobs out there, not just in the government. And so this panel, you have a varied amount of people with different backgrounds. They will be able to provide their thoughts and inputs. So with our moderator, Major Alex Holtzclaw, who is the Chief of Administrative Law in the Office of the Staff Judge Advocate at U.S. Cyber Command. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you so much for being here today to share your varied experience and what drew you to national security and cyber law, as well as any tips or ideas for folks who are interested in kind of breaking into that, what it means to be a national security law attorney. And so I'd like to thank you each for coming in today. Chris Morgan-Reese from the National Security Agency Office of General Counsel, Danny Hernandez from Amazon Web Services, and Lieutenant Colonel Josh Johnson, who I know well from as a Deputy Staff Judge Advocate for U.S. Cybercom. So I'd just like to start with asking each of you to do kind of an introduction on what interests you initially in national security and or cyber law, and kind of your individual path that you could share with our audience today. Chris, we'll start with you.
Thanks so much for having me today. Beginning as sort of a young philosophy student, got very interested in law of war issues. Between 0 and 3 people before me joined the Marine Corps as an enlisted man because I decided that was where I was going to learn about law of war sort of from the ground up. By sort of happenstance, got involved in computers and computer networking during the course of my time in the Marine Corps, deploying twice, again with the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit as a tactical data network specialist, sort of understanding a bit how the internet worked. That sort of piqued my interest, but had always wanted to go to law school prior to joining the Marine Corps as well. During law school, had sort of a keen interest in national security. Some of the issues that I had seen arise during my time in the service from 2004 to 2009 led me to at least dabble in some sort of privacy, civil liberties organizations, international human rights groups. But sort of for me, a fundamental portion of that was that I had also done an externship in a government agency and just sort of had seen the sort of immediate impact of that work in a way that I don't think that I saw in sort of the private sector, or rather in the sort of nonprofit sector. After that, was somewhat torn between whether or not I wanted to sort of do law or policy. And the Presidential Management Fellows Program, for those of you who aren't sort of intimately familiar with it, ends up sort of offering at least some latitude to explore sort of both of those possibilities. Did that in CISA's predecessor organization, which is the National Protections and Program Directorate, which again now CISA, where I worked, again, sort of on today's theme of partnerships, but worked on information sharing environment issues, sort of relatively nascent sort of critical infrastructure sharing communities, and then did some time as well within the Office of General Counsel there. At that point, did a rotation as well to the National Security Agency. Had no real intentions of making a career in intelligence, but to the extent that one can catch that bug, I did. Worked sort of for the first 4 years of my time at NSA in Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and sort of all of its various colors, flavors, up to and including sort of running the renewal in 2019 for Section 702, at least within the government. From the NSA side, but then transitioned about 4.5, 5 years ago to direct support to a client organization, which is the Computer Network Operations Group at NSA. In addition, with a colleague, I also have the CASA, which is the Cryptanalysis and Signals Analysis Group. So again, sort of the hackers and the code makers form my client set, in addition to advising the vulnerability equities process there, and have enjoyed it immensely.
That sounds like a great variety of experience, from philosophy major to the National Security Agency.
Translate more directly than one might think, yes.
Great. And so, Danny, can you share a little bit about your background?
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, good deal. So my name's Danielle Hernandez, and I'm originally from Oklahoma. So for all of you out there online, you don't have to be from DC or the DMV to get involved in the IC. So my background, I actually did Peace Corps after college and thought I would get involved in international law and international development until I realized that international law doesn't really exist as a practice when you're a junior attorney. So then I was like, well, what can I do to serve my country? So I got involved, did internships with DOD, really fell in love with it, thought I was going to be a JAG, got selected, and then got medically disqualified. So always have a plan B. And then, got through law school, really loved it, got selected for DOJ honors for the FBI, then had some issues with the polygraph, and they were like, this is going to take probably 3 years to adjudicate, so find a different job. So have a plan C. And so then I had interned at DIA. I really loved it, got involved. My mentor was a CIO attorney, Jamie Clark. He's still in the community, does like federal acquisition security counsel work at Commerce. And so if you guys know him, shout out to Jamie. But he was my mentor, got involved in CIO work. He really gave me a front seat on supply chain risk management when the FASC was just coming about. In that capacity at the Defense Intelligence Agency, I was also able to advise on JWICS. So anyone here connected to a TS network? Yeah, JWICS is the backbone. So that was a really great experience for me, really great for a junior attorney to really dig in on some cyber issues and network protection issues. And then from there, did a rotation at United States Forces Korea during the pandemic because there was a stop movement order in place for troops, but I guess civilians could move around. So I jumped over there, helped out, did some fiscal law analysis, and really fell in love with fiscal law. Now, I know that sounds so weird, but it is really cool, guys. Everything runs on money, so appropriations law is where it's at. So I did appropriations law for several years for DIA and then really wanted to get into government contracting work. And that's how I bounced over to AWS. And now I'm an associate corporate counsel over there, doing government contracts work, supporting contracts with the intelligence community. So Chris and I were just talking, we're actually working on different sides of the same issue and didn't even know it. So very small world, and it's really great to be here today. And that's really how I got into national security.
Thank you so much. And we'll turn it over to you, sir, to talk about your background and how you got here to Cybercom.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Amongst my many duties this week, right, emceeing, helping organize it, for me, this is the most important panel. The ability to educate young attorneys, practicing attorneys, law students, college students, anyone who's interested in national security law, to help them get to where they want to go, for me is the most important, because I didn't have that. I sort of stumbled into both law school and national security law practice. And so come from a family of public service, sort of your stereotypical grandparents who served in World War II. Actually grew up outside Fort Meade when I was a young boy. And then so I knew I wanted to serve, and I also knew I couldn't afford college. And so I ended up doing Army ROTC at the University of Virginia. And while I was doing ROTC, I didn't know what I wanted to do in the Army. And so it was kind of going back and forth between an infantry officer or an intelligence officer. And then I took a constitutional law class. And I just fell in love with the law and the fact patterns and the analysis and the critical thinking. And I was a American government or political science major at the time, and so I'm taking national security courses, foreign relations courses, and for me, just the perfect intersection of the law and national security was to try and become an Army JAG. Didn't know anything about becoming an Army Judge Advocate, and I was told the Army's JAG school was in Charlottesville. This was a very long time ago, mind you. And so I just walked down the campus of the University of Virginia. The Army JAG school is adjacent to U.S.A. Law School, and I just walked in the Army JAG school. And I went to the front desk and I said, hey, I think I was 19 years old. I'm a cadet down the street at the undergraduate campus, and I'm really interested in law and national security. What do you guys do? How do I become an Army Judge Advocate? And so they gave me great information. Took lots of national security legal classes to the extent I could as an undergraduate. And then when it was time to be branched for active duty, I was selected to be an intelligence officer, but I also asked, hey, can I delay my active duty service to go to law school? And so I was selected for educational delay, went to law school, and while I was in law school, took sort of your typical national security classes, public international law. This was a very long time ago. There were no cyber law classes at the time. And then I knew I was coming in as an Army judge advocate. And so when I graduated law school, sort of did your typical, I think any service judge advocate, your first couple of years, you're really doing those foundational legal jobs to really build you up as a practicing attorney. And then when you have that foundation, whether that's criminal litigation, or that's administrative law, contract, fiscal, then you can really launch into sort of a specialty. And so I was able to deploy to Afghanistan for 13 months, where I was able to practice the closest thing to international law, right? So law of armed conflict, public international law while deployed, came back, had some other tours as an appellate attorney, got back to national security with the 75th Ranger Regiment and the Joint Special Operations Command, did some more national security. And that was the first time I had a client ask me about cyber. And again, if you've listened to today's presentations, you heard General Hawk talk about the evolution of Cyber Command. And so the time I got these questions, the authorities weren't sorted out. It was very nascent. And that really sparked my interest in cyber. And I think along with the development in technology, where we all have cell phones, computers in our pockets at all times, just sort of really developed my interest. And so I'm also, I think, going to be the one to tell you it's never too late to cyber, and it's never too late to do national security law. I had no cyber jobs other than being in national security law jobs with cyber adjacent. And I came to be the Deputy General Counsel at Cyber Command. And I think anyone who's been in Cyber Command or the ecosystem as a practicing lawyer will tell you, you're learning things every single day. And cyber's a team sport. We like to say that. Cyber's a team sport. So is the practice of law, right? In the right office, and you can ask folks on your team, hey, I have this question about cyber. Can you help me? And so I think my big takeaway is that it's never too late to cyber, never too late to do national security law. And there's an ecosystem out there to help you. And so anyone streaming, anyone here that has questions, please reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. If I don't know the person to get you to, we have the network and ecosystem to get you to the right person.
Thank you, sir. And tying into sort of these diverse paths and somewhat meandering, I'll share my own as well. After an undergrad in economics and history, the natural path was, of course, to be a management analyst at the Defense Information Systems Agency. Very obvious career path there. That got me into the DoD and all the, obviously, cyber issues, the backbone at the time. DISA did a lot of different things to, provide the networks that everyone else relies on. And so I learned a lot from the technology standpoint, from the mission standpoint, working with military from different services. And then being a good native of Northern Virginia, when DISA bracked to Fort Meade, I said, okay, I'm never going there. Now's a good time to go to law school. I've confirmed I want to do that, and I really like what the GC does and these JAGs I've worked with. And so in law school, I had a little bit more defined vision of what I wanted to do. And so I did take a lot of national security related courses. I did internships with DoD and with the Air Force JAG Corps, and decided this is the best law firm that there is out there. Global reach, variety. You get to move around a lot on the company dime, and took advantage of Air Force programs to get an LLM in space and cyber law, and that brought me to the 67 Cyberspace Wing, to another assignment, and then ultimately to Cybercom at Fort Meade, where DISA is right down the road that I swore I'd never go and live. But it's been a fantastic journey, and as Lieutenant Colonel Johnson said, it's never too late to cyber, and there's a lot of really great, interesting problems. But sort of speaking to that idea of we all got here through very different paths and different both educational and experiential opportunities. What sort of areas of study or practical experience, if any, do you think are either critical or just good to have for someone entering in or wanting to enter into this? And I think maybe I'll pass it off to Danny first and give everyone else a chance as well.
Okay. Well, national security law is built on the back of admin law. I was talking about fiscal law, I was talking about contracts and acquisitions. You heard the Dernza up here, director of NSA, talking about the importance of the new authorities and acquisition that Cybercom has. That's how we get things done. Everything runs on money. So if you want to be a national security lawyer, you need to know money, you need to know personnel, because nothing happens without those things. So, as a junior attorney, you don't get to go in and do the sexy stuff. You're not advising on cyber operations on day 1. You're not doing human operations on day 2. You're in there learning the basics, and, it's a heck of a lot of fun. Doing litigation, you get to read about the crazy stuff that people do, and that is a lot of fun to do for a bit. Fiscal law, really fun to see how the budget works. If you're an attorney in here and you don't know how the DoD budget is put together or how the IC is funded, you need to go to a course, because money is how we get things done. So I would just say, if you want to be a national security lawyer, just be a good lawyer in the basic things. Know how to write, know how to research. Don't think that something is too below you, because, everything is built on the back of admin law, and without those foundational practices, we don't have national security at all.
Thank you, and as the chief of admin law, 100% agree. I'll turn it over to Chris for additional experiences and perhaps training or courses you would think would be beneficial.
I'll neither agree nor disagree with my colleague on the panel here in terms of admin law and fiscal law, but I will say that I've not done much of either. But again, it does touch sort of all aspects of the work. That certainly can't be downplayed. I think practicing in national security, at least for me, it's an interesting sort of space, and I think to the extent that young attorneys can sort of start thinking through the ways in which it differs from practicing law in sort of an open setting. Gives one a head start on doing a good job of providing counsel to a client. I think back to sort of courses that I took, books that I've read, and sort of the one that always sort of comes back to mind was Jamie Baker's, Judge Jamie Baker. There are many Jamie Bakers out there. They're not all created equal, in my opinion. But Judge Jamie Baker's book, In the Common Defense, is absolutely fantastic, just sort of as a study, a fundamental study of what it means to be a national security lawyer, to provide advice to a client who will then take your advice, hopefully, or perhaps not. But again, this advice is not necessarily going to make its way into court filings. This advice is not necessarily going to be put up for public scrutiny. This is advice that is going to be acted on or not, and at a certain point, sort of there is a final word on sort of those decisions. Understanding what it means to provide advice. Speaking to a group of JAGs, I know that you understand this perhaps better than most. But again, providing advice on operational matters where there is going to be sort of a fundamental, there's a go time, and that legal advice needs to be the best possible advice that you can offer in precisely the time that's been allocated. There is not necessarily the option to kick the can down the road. A fleeting opportunity is a fleeting opportunity. But again, to the extent that those young attorneys can sort of be thinking about how they would like to act, how they would like to be, who they would like to be in those circumstances, when confronted with sort of the difficult decision of potentially saying no but, or something along those lines, just sort of getting that resolve ingrained in themselves prior to being confronted with the actual sort of conflict situation is something that I can't recommend highly enough.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. Obviously, you can't file a continuance with an adversary to get the answer later. Sir, I would like to start with you on the idea of technical expertise. I think sometimes in talking to folks, law students, attorneys that have an interest, but maybe an intimidation factor. You said it's never too late to cyber, and it didn't sound like you had a lot of technical training. what would you say about any recommended, or do you think it's necessary to get technical foundational training or understanding in order to practice in this space effectively?
Yeah, I think sort of going off of Danny's line, I think the most important thing is that you're a good lawyer, right? And so when you're presented with an issue from your client, right, the first step is you have to understand the facts, right? And so getting that technical experience, depending on what the question presented to you from your client is, then you need to understand the facts. If we're presented if we're doing an offensive cyber operation, that lawyer doing the legal review needs to understand the mechanics of what we're doing. They don't need to be an expert in that area, but they need to understand those facts so they can provide sound legal advice and a recommendation to the client. It doesn't hurt. I mean, I know I've seen lawyers on one end that have every certification in cyber privacy and anything you can get. They were a computer science major. They've founded their own cybersecurity firm, and they also practice law. I think it's great. It doesn't hurt. I think if I had the time, then I would do that. But I think the most important thing is you need to be a sound lawyer, right? My experience, at least in the 75th Ranger Regiment, was we had an issue of to come and be a lawyer at the 75th Ranger Regiment and the Special Operations community, you had to go to Ranger School. You had to graduate Ranger School and have a tab. And I had a conversation with the commander one day, and he said, I don't need more Rangers. I need good lawyers. Right? And so General Nakasone was asked, sort of towards the tail end of his almost 6 years command of Cyber Command and as the Dernza, like what really stuck out? What were sort of 2 or 3 things that you wanted to emphasize? And he said critical thinking and leadership. And so obviously as a lawyer, right, that's what we bring to the table is critical thinking. And so I think it's great. I read broadly. Right, I've read every cyber book, not a cyber book, but as Chris said, fantastic book by Judge Baker. I read every periodical. I'm not going to endorse any of them. I listen to every podcast. I go and talk to our operators. I think you just, right, it's lifelong learning. It's always developing yourself as an attorney, but you just got to get the foundation, as Danny said. And I agree with Chris on the book. I also agree with Danny. Between national security law positions, I went down a path of administrative law, and we liked this for several years. And we like to say in the Army, or we have a senior leader who likes to say, America runs on Duncan, no endorsement, but the military runs on administrative law. So at least within the military, administrative law, absolutely the foundation. But one of my regrets, lowercase r, is I didn't do enough contract fiscal acquisition. And so you look at, when I first practiced national security law in 2007, the technology was not developed, and what you would call national security law is not what it is today, right? National security law today, as at least the Army JAG Corps thinks about it, is really the intersection of all these different practice areas, which is contract fiscal acquisition law, it's intelligence law, it's cyber, it's space, it's maritime, it's information advantage, it's intellectual property, right? You have to know the Constitution. You have to know domestic statutes. You have to know international law. When I was coming up as a national security lawyer, and to your point, Chris, actually overseas when providing advice, I mean, lives were at risk, whether it was American lives or those of the adversary. And it was slightly easier nowadays, absolutely, the intersection of all these different practice areas. And you have to sort of have an understanding, or at least have that team that can do those areas. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'll add in my own experience, the actual operators, the military, civilian personnel who are doing the stuff, the IT, managing infrastructure, doing operations, they are amped to share. They love what they do. They love sharing it. And so I think if you don't come in with kind of the knowledge to, get the set of facts and know exactly what it means, go back to the client and they will love to train you up. They will love to explain exactly what's going on. But also, ask. I've been fortunate to take advantage of the surge in online training opportunities that DoD has been presenting in the last few years and took some introductory courses, the same stuff that some of our folks take. So ask, hey, is there something I can take, or is there a way that I can, sit in on this, kind of audit this? I don't need the certifications. I just want to understand better. And I have yet to be turned down to have a chance to get in their training courses, to sit next to them and look over their shoulders and really get the best understanding I can, without, necessarily getting the certifications or even attempting to try to be close to their level of being able to do anything in this space. So I'd also like to...
Sorry, Alex, if I could jump in. The original question you had asked, what's sort of a fantastic experiential learning opportunity to really touch cyber, to touch all these other areas, contract, fiscal acquisition, intelligence law. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the law student volunteer program at U.S. Cyber Command, which I wish I had as a law student. And so if you're a law student out there, get in touch with us, look for our advertisements. But as a law student, if your law school will allow you, you come to U.S. Cyber Command. We put you through the security screening process. And under the supervision of a practicing attorney, you get to do all these really interesting, neat, cutting-edge things. We have 2 law student volunteers right now. We'll have 2 in the fall, and then we've got some in 2025. But look for those opportunities. I wish I had that when I was young, and I would fail if I didn't plug the U.S. Cyber Command opportunity.
Yes, sir. I definitely agree. We've had some great intern students helping out, getting experiences that I would have loved. I loved the experiences I had, just to kind of plug the various programs. I interned at DARPA. I interned at the DoD. I interned with the Air Force. You heard mention of the DIA internship and the Fellows program. As a law student, just like reach out, LinkedIn or the public-facing pages. Hey, I am really interested in your mission. I would love to know if you have any existing programs, or if maybe that's something that I could work on you with. Lots of students do it for credit, or just do it because they want the experience. So definitely, I think that's one way when you're like, oh, I don't have experience. Well, when you're a law student, like that's I think one of the prime times, or recent grad, some of these different honors programs that are out there. So reach out if you're not finding anything, or your career services, reach out directly to the entities and they'll let you know what they have on the table. And I think in some cases, if an agency or command gets enough sort of spontaneous interest, then they can, maybe make the business case to create a program. So you could also help yourself and future folks that want to get into it. I'll kind of go back to the question about maybe technical knowledge and training, and just wanted to ask Chris as well, on your experience and any suggestions you have.
Sure. I think it's at least in my experience, highly dependent on the client that you have. So I am sort of happy to work with an extraordinarily sort of technical workforce. And so would say that any attorney, and have said this internally as well, any attorney who is sort of coming to work at NSA, I think ought to have a baseline technical knowledge. You need to understand sort of the basic fundamentals of how the internet work to at least have some shared vocabulary with the client as you walk in the door. Again, that may not be true for all clients, but I do think it is very true for mine. And so again, that doesn't necessarily hold. To broaden the scope then, I guess, of sort of the advice or whatever it is that I'm offering here, I think understanding your client's business, and I think we've heard already 3 to 4 to 5 to 10 great ways to sort of get that understanding, whether it being, not suggesting that you have to go to Ranger School, but again, like understanding the people to whom you are providing that advice. That can come in the form of online classes. That can come in the form of client conversations, which again is sort of one of my favorite ways to sort of engage in that practice. I think it helps to build the trust with the client to understand that they can speak to you about complicated issues, that you are going to, at the very least, make an effort to comprehend what it is that they spend their entire day doing. And sort of my typical question, and I've sort of phrased this in a number of ways over the years, but my current favorite is essentially going into the client. It helps that I happen to provide operational support, but going into them and saying, if you need to call me on Friday at midnight, what is it that you want me to know when I walk in the door? what do you want my baseline knowledge to be before that emergency, so that we don't have to start from square one on Friday at midnight. And again, as you've heard, I think everyone on the panel at this point say, like, really, that those clients often are very keen to share that information with someone with whom they don't work every day. To have the attorneys come in and express an interest in the way they do their work, because often, at least again for my client, these are things that they can't speak about with anyone outside of the building, and everyone who works in offices and cubicles around them already knows exactly what they do, right? They've already shared all that information. So the idea to be able to speak to someone sort of openly and candidly about their work is, I think, an experience that many of my clients, I hope, have enjoyed as much as I have. But that's, yeah, I'll end there.
I appreciate that insight. I mean, obviously, as you said, you do need to know, and it's been reiterated, you need to know the facts. So I think I'm also hearing kind of a theme of like an openness to learning and not being afraid to ask, right? There's no dumb questions, but there can certainly be poorly written legal reviews if you got the facts wrong. So yeah, I think, someone in this space, as technology changes, as we've heard through the other panels today, you need to be willing to keep up, or try to the best extent you can. Interested in hearing from you as well. I know in obviously like acquisitions supporting national security missions, do you have a similar mindset and experience as far as what technical knowledge you need?
Absolutely. I certainly think it's necessary to have a technical knowledge of what my client does. For example, like I work for AWS, we do cloud. If I thought cloud was in the air, I'd be a really bad attorney. So cloud is on the ground, it's data centers, it's wires, it's computers, and that is cloud. Do I need to know how to code to be a good lawyer to my client? No. But do I need to understand their business and their services and how they want to operate? Yes. Do I need to understand their security requirements? Do I need to understand their supply chain requirements? Yes. So it's very expansive, the things that we have to be up on. And I mean, it's part of our professional responsibility. How can we be a good attorney if we don't even understand what we're opining on? My client doesn't want to know what I think. They want to know what the law is and how it applies to their business. So I certainly think it's very important to have that technical knowledge. So whatever client you're advising, just make sure you understand their business and what they're trying to do. Because we're enablers, right? We don't always say yes, because that's not the goal, but we want to enable them to do their mission in the most efficient way possible. And in order to be efficient, we have to be knowledgeable.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think kind of going back to something I heard in at least two of your comments, security clearance process, right? That can be maybe intimidating, or, if you're a student and you don't have family that's worked in, defense or any of these related industries, and you are told, hey, we have this form, and then it's going to take a really long time. What maybe encouragement or insights or, is it worth the wait, right? I will maybe ask Chris, coming from the NSA office, if you have any thoughts on sort of that potential roadblock to people even trying to enter the space.
On the assumption that my security personnel will review all of my comments, our security office is great. They're there to make sure that the right people are getting in the door. Yes. But look, it's not the most comfortable process. I cannot claim that I had a whole lot of fun going through the process, and I would not promise that for anyone who's listening. Nevertheless, the stuff that I do every day, I couldn't do if I hadn't gone through it, and it's fantastic. So again, is it worth the wait? Like, if you're asking me, absolutely.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel Justin, I know you raised it in the context of the intern program, but as someone who's been a supervisor and you've kind of worked with folks as well as your own experience going through the various processes, what maybe advice or thoughts would you have?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. The NSA security folks are incredible and wonderful. I just want to say first, it depends, right? As very lawyerly, it depends on the job you're looking for, right? If you're coming and you're interested in working at the NSA or U.S. Cyber Command, we have certain security requirements. And maybe that bar is up here, right? You need typically a top secret clearance. You need to pass counterintelligence polygraph, some additional screening. If you're looking to go into a military service as a judge advocate, it's a little bit easier. You need a secret clearance. There's no polygraph required. It just depends. I mean, corporate America, whether you're at a corporation or you're at a law firm that has a national security law practice, it depends. Who are the clients? And so I don't want folks to get discouraged that, if you're not interested in coming to Cyber Command or the NSA or other government agencies that have sort of a high bar, don't be frustrated. There's a lot of jobs that are much quicker in terms of background checks and security clearances. One I would, for those folks that are coming to those agencies and organizations that have a higher bar on security clearances, including a polygraph, I would tell you be patient. It is absolutely, as Chris said, absolutely worth it. When you get through the process, and again, depending on where you're working, you're looking for a mission and responsibilities and fulfillment that will go beyond your wildest expectations. And so patience depends on what job you're looking for, and then absolutely worth it.
Oh, yes, please.
As another tip, don't do drugs, like hard drugs, so stay away from those. I heard a CIA attorney say once that in order to get your clearance, live the most boring life possible. Like, don't do crazy stuff that's going to get you arrested, or don't do drugs that you're going to have to report. So it absolutely is worth it. It does take time. It took me like several times to get through my polygraph. The worst people to take a polygraph are lawyers. The best people are sociopaths. So just if you have trouble with a polygraph, it's okay. My polygrapher made me cry. Probably not the best, security personnel. You probably have better people over here. But so just know that it might take multiple times. Just be patient. Live a boring life. Don't do drugs. And you'll get through it.
I think maybe what we've heard here is also another push for all these different programs you could do as a student to at least get like a secret clearance and make you eligible for a fair number of jobs. I know we've got panelists up here who have all done jobs that required a top secret, and that can be a longer process, but there is a ton of great work in national security space, in cyberspace, as an attorney that doesn't necessarily require that. So if you're looking as like, hey, I want to get into this, I want to start down this path to maybe work in one of the agencies or departments, then if you get the right internship or get the right entry-level job, you don't necessarily have to try to break all the way to your ultimate goal at the first step. And don't let it be an obstacle or a deterrent, because as we've heard here, right, you can have one where it's like, oh, it's going to take several years, and that's maybe not a timeline that your student loan debt can sustain. So so definitely appreciate your story of perseverance. And as we're getting to kind of the end here, as I want to give a chance for each of you maybe to give an anecdote or example of something that was either maybe really interesting or rewarding that you've done in your career thus far related to national security and or cyber that you can obviously share in this unclassified setting. I will maybe start at the end with Lieutenant Colonel Johnson as he looks deep in thought.
I'm trying to screen my anecdotes for classified information. I would give two. I mean, in sort of, again, years ago when we continue to do the counterterrorism fight, being part of an organization and providing legal advice where we were able to target someone who had caused grave damage to the United States, and additionally in terms of casualties and lost Americans, we're able to target that adversary successfully. And then really every single day at U.S. Cyber Command, and working with our partners at the NSA and with the private industry and academia. Every day I come to work, I don't dread it. I walk briskly from the parking garage to my office because I know every single day I'm going to learn something. I'm going to have incredible clients and incredible partners throughout the interagency, the U.S. government, private sector, academia, and it's really every single day. I don't have one at Cyber Command that I can necessarily share, but there's so many.
Thank you, sir. Well, maybe just come down the line. Danny, if you have an example you'd like to share.
Yes, let me tell you tales of fiscal law. No, I won't do that. But I would say probably one of the most rewarding things was resolving an issue that happened with one of the Combatant Command J2s. Whenever I was at DIA, there was an ongoing funding issue that had been going on for over a decade. I dug in, flipped out the CBJBs, the Congressional Budget Justification books, figured out funding, wrote this beautiful memo, and then went in there and just owned it. It was great. And ultimately, providing the facts and the analysis enabled my client to enter into a successful negotiation. So something that had taken 10 years to resolve was resolved with just facts and analysis. This is the truth. And so I would say that, as we kind of go forth and, be our little attorney selves, I mean, that is the success story, right? Is just being a good attorney, getting down to the facts, doing the analysis, enabling the client. And so you can do that in whatever portfolio you're in. It could be a sexy cyber story that you can't talk about. It could be a really cool fiscal one. And so, yeah, I just want you guys to kind of go away with that, knowing that, just be a good lawyer.
Thank you. And Chris?
So in the interest of maintaining my job, et cetera, and having something to go back to on Friday after the conference, I think I'll just sort of make a broader statement, if I could, just generally about, I think, the pleasure that one can find in what I would call sort of providing sort of translation services. So again, highly technical client that then needs to be either expressed, that sort of highly technical detail needs to be expressed in a way that is sort of digestible, whether that is a FISC judge or whether it's to sort of a decision maker. And sort of seeing the legal analysis, seeing that our own understanding of sort of the technology can be sort of translated then into a way that is cognizable by the law, and understanding that it's highly unlikely that that particular nuance of technical detail and that level of technical detail has likely ever made its way into sort of the legal spotlight, I find immensely satisfying, and I'm just not sure where else one could do such a thing. So.
Thank you all so much for your contributions today. I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Lincoln. Thank you, everyone, for watching and participating.
Thank you to our panelists for sharing your experiences and advice, both to our in-person audience, but particularly to our virtual audience, targeting our younger attorneys out there and students that want to get into a career of national security law. So for everyone, we will be on break for the next 30 minutes, and our session will resume at 13:30. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mallory Rosso. I'm a third-year law student at Georgetown University Law Center.
Hi, I'm Eliza Savanius, and I'm a third-year law student at Harvard Law School. We're here to share about our experiences as law students with the U.S. Cyber Command Office of the Staff Judge Advocate.
The U.S. Cybercom Student Volunteer Program provides an opportunity for highly competitive law students who have an interest in cybersecurity and U.S. national security to work alongside U.S. Cybercom attorneys in a variety of cyber and national security law-related matters, while earning semester credits towards graduation. Law student volunteers have the unique opportunity to be exposed to cutting-edge legal issues affecting U.S. national security interests across the globe.
The invitation for applications is published during the fall semester on the U.S. Cybercom website. Applications are accepted between January 3rd and 31st. Qualified applicants must be able to obtain a top-secret security clearance and should demonstrate strong legal research, writing, and oral presentation skills, as well as have an interest in cybersecurity and U.S. national security. While the Student Volunteer Program is unpaid, students can earn course credits toward graduation while gaining invaluable professional experience.
I specifically went to law school with the goal of becoming a cyber and national security lawyer, so it doesn't really get better than an externship with U.S. Cyber Command. The attorneys are collaborative and involve us in all aspects of their practice. We tackle complicated legal issues and have planned a series of meet and greets across the interagency, exposing us to the work of other federal agencies. I definitely didn't expect to have the opportunity to review a cyber effects mission as part of the national security law team. I'm obtaining real-world experience that I know is going to be invaluable as I launch my career in national security. As a bonus, you get a clearance and develop professional contacts.
I applied for U.S. Cybercom's Law Student Volunteer Program because it offers an opportunity to gain hands-on experience and work on some of today's most cutting-edge legal issues. Our day-to-day work involves conducting legal research and writing under the supervision of the attorneys here at Fort Meade. Whether it's helping to draft a legal opinion, reviewing legislative proposals, or attending legal engagements with partners, this experience has been incredible. Working with them, I have learned a lot about how highly effective attorneys approach complex questions at the intersection of technology and national security. Their feedback has allowed me to sharpen and expand my legal skill set. This experience has been a highlight of law school, giving me the chance to be part of an incredible team and mission.
If you are a law student who is interested in pursuing a career in cyber law and U.S. national security, we encourage you to visit the U.S. Cybercom website and apply next time.